Once upon a time, four little words that conjure magic, peril, and lessons we'd sometimes rather not learn. But have you ever stopped to think where once truly began? Take, for example, Snow White. Beauty, envy, and a single bite that changed everything. But when you peel back the sugar coating, you'll find something far older, carved from history and sharpened by myth. So, traveler, grab yourself a mug, settle in, and let us delve into a tale as old as time.
Wait a minute. Isn't that from Beauty and the Beast?
Well, I do love a good crossover, but why don't we just pretend that I got it right and roll the intro anyways? Snow White's roots don't begin with dwarves or an evil queen in a fairy tale forest. No, that story begins with very real women entrenched in envy, deception, and politics. The first of these two women was Margarete von Waldeck from the 16th century, a German countess famed for her lord exiled by a jealous stepmother. She fell in love with Prince Philip of Spain, and sadly, before they could be married, she died. Some say poisoned to stop that alliance from happening. And then we have Maria Sophia von Erthol from the 18th century. Her family were craftsmen in the town of Lohr in Bavaria, and she owned a mirror said to be crafted by either her father or one of her father's craftsmen that spoke to anyone who looked into it. Not through magic, but through a clever acoustic device that would echo one's words back to them. We suspect that the mirror helped to begin the spinning of the myth of the magical reflection, and possibly the seed of the fairest of them all trope. The tragic threads of these two women's tales found their way into the tale of Snow White. Exile, jealousy, betrayal. Very real lives lost to create a cautionary parable. But what was the true story of Snow White? Well, these two very real women were bound across centuries by a common toxic and poisonous thread: envy. And their stories sowed the seeds for what would become the mother of all fairy tales. And if you think apples started with Snow White as a trope in fairy tales, well, I've got some information for you, my friends. No, they go back to the oldest stories in all of human history. Take the Garden of Eden, for instance. While it's nowhere mentioned in the Bible itself that Adam and Eve ate of an apple, they ate of a fruit. And for some reason, over time, that fruit has become symbolized by the apple, the loss of innocence, all in a single bite. And then in Greek myth, we have the apple of discord, written upon it, for the fairest of them all. And it would cause great fights between the gods and spark the Trojan War of all things. And then from Norse mythology, we have Idun's apples. The very magical apples that, once they were stolen, even Odin, king of the gods, shivered at his own mortality. And in Snow White, all of those legends become merged together. The temptation, envy, and the razor-thin line between life and death. A single fruit, oftentimes heavier than the greatest of crowns, sometimes the simplest objects carry the heaviest of curses. And from Eden to Olympus, the apple reminds us that a sweet exterior can hide absolutely ruinous consequences. Beauty and peril, all in one bright peel. And then we have the symbolism of mirrors. Seldom do mirrors rest idle in myths. They reflect more than just our faces. They echo our desires, they feed our vanity, and they twist our self-worth. In Greek lore, Narcissus found himself wasting away, staring at his own reflection in a river, giving rise to the term we know today as narcissism, the self-obsession. And Circe spied through enchanted mirrors, twisting souls from afar. And in Snow White, the magic mirror stands as a form of judge and executioner, stroking the queen's envy until she is no longer a ruler, but a vessel for obsession. It is the reflection that we crave, some confirmation that we are the fairest of them all. But that craving can lead us down darker paths than any mystical forest. Vanity, pride, self-doubt. The mirror channels them all. And so we ask ourselves, how often have we let the mirror, either figurative or real, determine our self-worth? In this tale, it warps the queen from a mere monarch into a monster. Margareta's rumored poisoning and Maria's magic mirror show how rumor and real tragedy entwined. Tales of a lethal goblet, a cunning stepmother, and a mesmerizing mirror trickled into the pot of folklore. And over the centuries, those ingredients brewed in the story we know today as Snow White, or Schneewittchen in the original German. But what about the dwarves, I hear you say, those of you who have not yet fallen asleep from the drink? What about the dwarves? Well, they're quite possibly the echoes of child miners from medieval Europe, small in stature and forced to work underground in cramped and confined spaces. Another grim detail worn smooth by retellings and time. It is said that Margareta's region of Bavaria had children employed in their mines, wearing bright hats in case they became lost underground, and many of them becoming stunted in their growth because of the harsh conditions, and growing up to be very small in stature men, that is, if they ever grew up at all. And over time, that bleak reality softened into the 7 dwarves of the fairy glen that we know today. Certainly a sugar coating of a cruel truth. And that's folklore for you, isn't it? Painful facts retold as magic, so that we can bear them. In the final version, Snow White's stepmother, consumed by envy, coats this apple in poison, after attempting to strangle her with lace and another poisoning attempt with a comb. Not exactly the most efficient, but you do what you have to when you're trying to eliminate your 7 to 12-year-old daughter. But one bite, and innocence slips away. Just like that, into a death-like slumber. The dwarves grieve, the huntsman's character is tested, and nature itself seems to mourn. But it's so much more than a bedtime story. Each element resonates. The apple, a pivotal bridge in the building of myth. The mirror, a reflection of envy and vanity. The queen's darkest impulses made visible. And sleep and death, often associated in old myths as walking the line of the underworld, especially in Greek and Germanic myths. And in older tellings of this story, Snow White was no more than 7 years old. The dwarfs are often more monstrous creatures, and the queen's punishment for her indiscretions and envy, oh, it is far more grotesque. Over time, the story has softened, but a poisoned apple and the raw, unadulterated envy. Those have stayed the same. So was it a cautionary tale about the price of vanity? Or perhaps about parental jealousy? Or the reflection of the ugly lengths humanity will go to preserve fleeting beauty? Well, perhaps it is all of the above. And so, at a glance, this apple is harmless. But in truth, it could be heavier than a crown. In the end, Snow White survives, at least in most versions. Usually thanks to intervention, love, or sometimes fate. The queen, undone by her own sorcery, meets a grim end, and the dwarves recede into the forest like phantoms from an older time. Yet the story remains, a tapestry woven into the very fabric of our culture, woven from real tragedies, from ancient mythic symbols, and the very real fear that exists in all men and women. The fear of losing beauty or power. From Margaretta's haunting end to Maria Sophia's enchanting mirror, from Eden's downfall to Idun's life-giving fruit, this legend was a composite of a great many cautionary tales about envy's corrosive effects and about the illusions that betray us in reflective surfaces. So, my friends, to envy, to beauty, and the truths we'd rather not face. And stay bloodthirsty, traveler, for knowledge, for honesty, and for the truths beyond a mere once upon a time.